The spaceship Aurora 7 drifted through the cold darkness of space, carrying 3 astronauts on a deep space exploration mission. Captain Ethan Cole, engineer Mark Voss, and biologist Dr. Emily Hart had spent months in space, mapping uncharted regions of the galaxy. But today, something went wrong. A sudden gravitational pull yanked their ship off course, dragging them toward a planet that had not been on their scanners. Alarms blared, red warning lights flashed, and Ethan gritted his teeth as he struggled to regain control. "Engines are failing," Mark shouted, gripping the control panel. "The atmosphere is too thick. We're going down," Emily cried. The ship tumbled through thick, violet-colored clouds, flames licking its hull as it entered the unknown world's atmosphere. The impact was violent. The metal screeched, and the force slammed them against their seats. Then, silence. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. His body ached, and his vision was blurry. The cockpit was filled with smoke, and sparks flickered from the damaged systems. Mark groaned beside him, pressing a hand to his forehead. "Emily," Ethan rasped. "I'm here," her voice came from the back. She was already checking the ship's scanners. "We're alive, but the ship is in bad shape. We crash-landed." Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt, his muscles sore. The emergency lights barely lit the interior. The main controls were fried, and the communication system was dead. "No way to send a distress signal?" Mark asked. Emily shook her head. "Not unless we can repair the ship. But looking at the damage, that could take weeks, if we even have the right materials." Ethan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Then we need to go outside, see where we are." Mark pushed the jammed door with all his strength until it finally slid open with a metallic groan. The 3 astronauts stepped onto alien soil, their boots sinking slightly into soft, golden sand. They found themselves in a strange yet breathtaking landscape. Tall, crystalline trees shimmered under a pink sky, and in the distance, rivers of silver water flowed through lush green fields. The air was warm, and surprisingly, they could breathe without their helmets. "This place is incredible," Emily whispered. Mark tapped his wrist scanner. "Oxygen levels are stable. No immediate threats, but no signs of human life either." Ethan frowned. "Stay alert. Just because we don't see danger doesn't mean it's not here." They gathered supplies from the ship, preparing for a short expedition to find water and shelter. But before they could take another step, a strange humming sound filled the air. Ethan raised his hand, signaling his team to stop. "Do you hear that?" Suddenly, shadowy figures emerged from the trees, moving with grace and speed. Ethan's pulse quickened as he and Mark instinctively reached for their sidearms, but what they saw made them freeze in shock. Standing before them were tall, elegant alien women, clad in golden armor. Their eyes glowed faintly, their skin shimmered like polished gemstones, and their long, flowing hair moved as if caught in an unseen breeze. They held weapons, long, sleek energy spears, but they didn't attack. One of them, who appeared to be the leader, stepped forward. She had piercing violet eyes and an air of authority. She studied the humans with curiosity before speaking in an unfamiliar language, her voice smooth yet commanding. "We don't understand you," Emily said carefully, raising her hands to show she wasn't a threat. The alien leader tilted her head, then gestured to her warriors. Within moments, they surrounded the astronauts, their weapons glowing faintly. "I don't think they trust us," Mark muttered under his breath. Ethan took a deep breath. "Let's not give them a reason to attack." Before they could react, one of the aliens pressed a glowing device to Ethan's neck. He tensed, but there was no pain, only a sudden warmth spreading through his body. A moment later, the alien leader spoke again, this time in perfect English. "You are trespassers," she said, her voice now clear and firm. "You will come with us." The astronauts exchanged glances. They had no choice. Resistance could mean death, and understanding these beings might be their only way to survive. As they were led away, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their arrival had changed something on this planet, something bigger than they could yet understand. Ethan, Mark, and Emily walked cautiously, surrounded by the tall, armored alien women. Their weapons still glowed faintly, a silent warning not to make any sudden moves. "Well," Mark muttered under his breath, "at least they didn't kill us on sight." Ethan gave him a sharp glance. "Let's keep it that way." The alien leader, the one with piercing violet eyes, led the way through this strange, shimmering forest. The trees sparkled as if made of crystal, and soft glowing creatures floated around them like fireflies. Despite the beauty, the astronauts knew they were far from safe. Emily whispered, "Do you think they're taking us to their leader?" Ethan nodded. "Most likely. If we're lucky, they'll let us explain why we're here." After a long walk, the group reached the edge of the forest. What they saw beyond it took their breath away. A grand alien city stretched across the horizon, its towers tall and elegant, glowing under the soft pink sky. The architecture was unlike anything the astronauts had seen, curved, flowing structures that looked almost organic, as if grown rather than built. Bridges of shimmering energy connected floating platforms, and hovering ships glided smoothly through the air. "Unbelievable," Mark whispered. "They're way more advanced than we thought." The aliens led them through the streets, where more of their kind stopped to watch. Every single one of them was female. Some were tall and muscular, others slender and elegant, but there were no men anywhere. "Where are the males?" Ethan wondered aloud. Emily shook her head. "Maybe they live separately. Or maybe there are none." They didn't have time to ask. The soldiers brought them to an enormous palace-like structure, its golden surface reflecting the light of the twin suns overhead. Large doors slid open, revealing a vast hall lined with alien warriors, each standing at attention. At the far end of the hall, a figure sat on a raised throne. She was taller than all the others, dressed in flowing robes with intricate patterns woven in gold and silver. A delicate crown-like headpiece rested on her forehead, and her eyes, deep and knowing, locked onto the astronauts the moment they entered. The alien leader who had captured them bowed. "Great Sovereign, we have found trespassers from the stars." The woman on the throne studied them for a long moment before finally speaking. "Humans." Ethan stiffened. She knew what they were. You know about us?" Emily asked, her voice careful. The Sovereign leaned forward slightly. "We have heard of your kind. But you were never meant to come here." Ethan stepped forward. "It was an accident. Our ship crashed due to an unknown force pulling us in. We mean no harm." The Sovereign's expression didn't change. "Your arrival is dangerous. You must leave at once." Mark gave a dry chuckle. "Trust me, we'd love to. But our ship is wrecked. We're stranded here." A murmur ran through the gathered warriors. The Sovereign tapped her fingers against the arm of her throne, thinking. "You may stay for now," she finally said. "But understand this, our world is not kind to outsiders. And if you disrupt our balance, you will not leave alive." Ethan felt the weight of her words. "We understand." A strange new home. The astronauts were taken to a large chamber, high above the city. From the balcony, they could see the entire capital, glowing in the light of the setting suns. Mark flopped onto a soft, silk-like bed. Well, that went better than expected. No dungeons, no chains. Emily paced, deep in thought. But what did she mean? Why is our presence dangerous? And where are all the men? Ethan stared out at the city. "We need to learn more. If we're going to survive here, we need to understand this place." Just then, the doors slid open. An alien woman entered. She had golden tattoos running down her arms and a calm, measured expression. "I am Scifi," she said. "I will be your guide while you remain here." Ethan turned to her. "Thank you, Scifi. Can I ask you something?" She nodded. Ethan gestured to the city below. "We've seen only women. Where are the men of your species?" For the first time, Soraya hesitated. Then she said softly, "There are no men on this planet." Emily's eyes widened. "None at all." Soraya shook her head. "Not anymore." Silence filled the room. Ethan's mind raced. What had happened to them? Were they wiped out? Or was something even stranger at play? One thing was clear. This planet held secrets, and those secrets might decide whether they survived or not. Ethan, Mark, and Emily sat in silence, Soraya's words echoing in their minds. "There are no men on this planet. Not anymore." Mark finally broke the silence. "What do you mean, not anymore? Did something happen to them?" Soraya's expression was calm, but her golden eyes held a shadow of sorrow. "It is not something we speak of often, but if you wish to understand our world, you must know the truth." She gestured for them to follow her. The astronauts exchanged glances before standing up and walking after her. Soraya led them down the winding halls of the palace, past glowing corridors and intricate murals carved into the walls. The patterns seemed to tell a story, but the meaning was unclear. Finally, they entered a vast chamber filled with floating blue orbs of light. At the center stood an enormous holographic display, showing a rotating image of the planet. Soraya touched the display, and the image changed. A vision of a once thriving world appeared before them. Tall structures, lush landscapes, and bustling cities filled with both male and female aliens. "This was our world, long ago," Soraya said. Ethan, Emily, and Mark watched as the images shifted. The males and females worked together, building their civilization. But then, something changed. The next scene showed war, fire spreading across the cities. Strange metallic machines floated in the air, unleashing destruction. The men and women who once stood together turned against each other. Emily's eyes widened. "A civil war." Soraya nodded. "It was a war between the males and females of our kind. It lasted for centuries, consuming everything." Ethan frowned. "But why? What caused it?" Soraya hesitated, then spoke. "Our kind evolved with powerful abilities, strength, intelligence, control over energy. The males believed they should rule, claiming that their physical might made them superior. The females fought back, refusing to be controlled. What began as a conflict over leadership became a war for survival. A hologram showed more destruction. The once thriving world turned into a battlefield. Then, a final image appeared, the men vanishing. They lost, Mark guessed. Soraya's expression darkened. They did. And when the war ended, no males remained. Silence filled the chamber. The astronauts absorbed the weight of her words. Emily finally spoke. "You're saying they were wiped out?" Soraya's gaze was unreadable. "We do not know what truly happened to them. Some say they perished in the war. Others believe they were exiled to the depths of the planet. A few whisper that they are still out there, waiting to return." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. And if they did? Soraya's eyes met his. Then our world would face chaos once more. A dangerous truth. The astronauts left the chamber, their minds filled with questions. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "So we just landed on a planet where men were either wiped out or forced to disappear." "Yeah, that's not concerning at all." Ethan exhaled. "It explains why they reacted so strongly when they saw us. We're the first men they've seen in who knows how long." Emily crossed her arms, "Which means we need to be very careful. If they see us as a threat, we're done for," Mark finished grimly. Soraya, who had been walking ahead, suddenly stopped. "There is something else." They turned to her. "You are not the first visitors to come here." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Soraya's voice lowered. "There was another ship, many years ago. The men aboard disappeared." Mark tensed. "Disappeared how?" Soraya looked away. "No one knows. Some believe they tried to escape. Others say they were taken deep into the forests, where no one returns." Ethan's mind raced. So either they were captured, or they found something they weren't supposed to. Siraya turned back to them. That is why you must be careful. Not all in this city trust you. Some believe your presence is dangerous. If they decide you are a threat, they will not let you live. The warning was clear. The astronauts were walking on thin ice. Ethan clenched his fists. Then we'll just have to prove we're not their enemy. Siraya studied him, then nodded. I hope you are right. As they returned to their chambers, Ethan looked out at the city below. The sun had set, and the glowing structures shone brightly against the dark sky. But something felt off. A strange hum vibrated through the air, distant yet powerful. It was subtle, almost like a whisper. Emily noticed his expression. Something wrong. Ethan frowned. I don't know, but I have a feeling. We're not alone here. Unknown to them, deep in the forest beyond the city, something stirred. A shadow moved through the trees, its golden eyes reflecting the light of the moons. The past was not as buried as they thought. And soon, they would learn the truth. The night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of the alien city. Ethan, Emily, and Mark stood near the balcony of their chambers, their minds heavy with everything they had learned. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. So let me get this straight. The men of this planet were wiped out or disappeared, and the last group of male visitors vanished without a trace. Yeah, that's not terrifying at all. Emily frowned. It's more than that. Siraya's warning was clear. Some of them don't trust us, and if we make one wrong move, we could be next. Ethan leaned against the railing, staring at the vast alien landscape. The towering structures of the city glowed softly, but beyond the city's borders, the dark forest stretched endlessly. That was where the previous visitors had disappeared. What if they're still out there? Ethan said suddenly. Emily? And Mark turned to him. What do you mean? Emily asked. Ethan crossed his arms. What if those men didn't just disappear? What if they're alive, hiding somewhere in the forest? Mark raised an eyebrow. That's a big what-if, man. Emily considered it. Siraya said no one knows what happened to them. If they were captured or taken somewhere, maybe there's a chance. Ethan pushed off the railing. I say we find out. Mark scoffed. Find out how? It's not like we can just walk out of here and ask around. Ethan grinned. Actually, that's exactly what we're going to do. A risky escape. The city was quieter at night, the glowing pathways dimming as most of the citizens rested. However, armored guards still patrolled the area. The three astronauts moved carefully, avoiding attention as they slipped through the palace corridors. Ethan led the way, Siraya's words replaying in his mind. Some believe they were taken, deep into the forests, where no one returns. They reached a small side entrance, hidden in the shadows. Mark checked the path ahead. Coast is clear. Emily looked uneasy. Are we really doing this? Ethan nodded. We need answers. If we don't figure out what happened to those men, we could end up like them. Taking a deep breath, they stepped into the cool night air and disappeared into the city's lower streets. The Forbidden Zone. Navigating the city was easier than expected. The people of this world seemed to trust their security, and few were outside at this hour. After a tense journey, they reached the outer edge of the city, where massive vine-covered walls separated civilization from the wild forests beyond. Mark let out a low whistle. That's a big wall. Ethan approached it, running his hand over the strange, smooth stone. There must be a way through. Emily examined the side. Over here. A narrow passage, barely noticeable, led through the wall. It was small, but just wide enough for them to squeeze through. Mark shook his head. This feels like a terrible idea. Ethan grinned. Then let's hurry before we change our minds. One by one, they slipped through the passage and into the unknown. The shadow in the trees. The forest was alive. Strange glowing plants pulsed softly, casting an eerie blue light. Insects with shimmering wings floated through the air, their movements hypnotic. But the deeper they went, the more the silence grew heavy. Emily whispered, "Something's wrong. It's too quiet." Mark swallowed hard. "Yeah, I feel like something's watching us." Ethan stopped suddenly. He had heard it too. A rustling sound. They turned, scanning the darkness. The shadows between the trees seemed to shift. A low growl echoed in the distance. Emily gripped her stun pistol. "We're not alone." Then, without warning, something moved. A blur of motion, and a dark figure leaped from the trees. Ethan barely had time to react before a powerful force slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. "Ethan," Emily shouted. Ethan struggled, his attacker pinning him down. It was humanoid, but its skin was darker, almost camouflaged against the night. Its eyes glowed an unnatural gold, and its features were sharp, almost human, but not quite. The figure hissed, but before it could strike, a second shape emerged from the darkness. A commanding voice rang out. "Enough." The attacker immediately froze. Ethan coughed, looking up at the newcomer. Another figure, taller, stronger, clearly the leader. Ethan's heart pounded. "Who are you?" The leader stepped forward, revealing his face, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was a man from this world, and he was very much alive. Ethan stared in shock at the man standing before him. He looked human, tall, muscular, and battle-worn, his golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim forest light. His clothes were made of dark, rough fabric, stitched together with plant fibers, and his face held the marks of someone who had lived in the wild for years. Emily and Mark stood frozen behind Ethan, their weapons half-raised but uncertain. The strange man narrowed his eyes at them. "You're not from this world," he said in a low, firm voice. Ethan slowly sat up, his heart pounding. "Neither are you, are you?" The man hesitated before extending his hand, helping Ethan to his feet. "I was once, a long time ago. My name is Darius." Emily stepped forward cautiously. "You're one of the missing men, aren't you?" Darius's expression darkened. He glanced at the shadowed trees, his posture tense. "We need to move. It's not safe here." Ethan nodded, sensing the urgency in his voice. Without hesitation, they followed Darius deeper into the forest, their footsteps quick and silent. The hidden refuge. After what felt like an hour of navigating through dense trees and overgrown vines, they arrived at a hidden encampment. The area was surrounded by natural rock formations, camouflaged with large woven nets covered in leaves. Ethan's eyes widened as he saw more men, at least a dozen, dressed in similar rugged clothing, their faces filled with surprise and curiosity. Mark muttered, "So the rumors were true. The men who disappeared are still alive." Darius led them into a large cave where a small fire flickered. "Sit," he said, motioning to some nearby logs. As they settled in, Darius crossed his arms. "Now tell me, who are you, and why are you here?" Ethan took a deep breath. "We're astronauts from Earth. Our ship crashed, and we were taken in by the rulers of this world." Darius let out a bitter laugh. "Taken in, or kept as prisoners?" Emily frowned. "They never locked us up, but it felt strange. Some of them were kind, but others were suspicious." Darius nodded. "That's how it starts. They act welcoming at first, but make no mistake. The ruling class, the matriarchs, see men as nothing more than tools. When they decided we were no longer useful, we vanished from the city, one by one." Ethan's stomach tightened. "So you were taken and brought here?" Darius shook his head. "No, we escaped." The truth about Scifi. Darius explained that centuries ago, Scifi was ruled by both men and women. But as time passed, the matriarchs took control, believing their rule was superior. They slowly removed men from positions of power, using advanced technology to ensure their dominance. "But they couldn't get rid of us completely," Darius said. "They still needed us for certain tasks. When other alien men arrived, they were tested. Those who were too strong-willed or rebellious were sent away, or worse. Mark's fists clenched, so they just exiled anyone they couldn't control. Darius's expression hardened. Yes, some were left to die in the wild. Others, we never saw again. Emily shuddered. Then why haven't they killed all of you? Darius exhaled slowly. Because we're still useful to them. They fear what will happen if we're completely wiped out. They know we're strong, and that's why we've been waiting for the right moment to fight back. Ethan's mind raced. The matriarchs weren't just hiding the truth about the missing men. They were controlling the entire planet through fear. Then we have to stop them, Ethan said. Mark gave him a sharp look. Are you serious? We barely survived sneaking out here. What can we do against an entire civilization? Darius studied Ethan for a long moment. You might be able to do more than you think. Ethan met his gaze. What do you mean? Darius glanced at the other men. You're new. They don't see you as a threat yet. If you return, you can gather information, find weaknesses in their defenses. We need someone on the inside. Emily looked at Ethan with concern. That's dangerous. Ethan nodded. I know, but if we do nothing, we're next. Darius placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Then let's get you ready. A plan begins. That night, the 3 astronauts trained with the lost men, learning survival techniques and hand-to-hand combat. Though their time was short, Ethan felt a new sense of determination growing within him. Before they left, Darius gave Ethan a small device, a communicator made from salvage technology. Use this if you find anything. But be careful. If they catch you, they won't give you a second chance. Ethan gripped it tightly. We won't fail. With one last look at their new allies, Ethan, Emily, and Mark slipped back into the shadows, returning to the city with a dangerous secret and a mission. Ethan, Emily, and Mark slipped back into the city of Sarah just before dawn, their minds heavy with the secrets they now carried. The truth was clear. This world was not as peaceful as it seemed. The matriarchs ruled with an iron grip, deciding which men were useful and which ones vanished. As they walked through the towering golden streets, they were careful to act normal. Any sign of nervousness might expose them. Ethan whispered, Remember, we don't know anything. We're just survivors of a crash, grateful to be here. Emily nodded, adjusting her posture. Right. No suspicious movements. Mark exhaled. I hope Darius and the others were right about us being able to help from the inside. They had a mission, to uncover the weaknesses in the matriarch's rule. And for that, they had to play their part perfectly. A growing suspicion. Queen Syra, the supreme ruler of the city, had sent a summons for them. It was unusual. Why now? Had someone noticed their absence? As they entered the grand palace, they saw the queen seated on her throne, her violet eyes sharp and calculating. You disappeared for the night, she said, her voice smooth but firm. Where were you? Ethan's heart pounded, but he forced a calm smile. We were just exploring the city. Everything here is new to us. Sarah studied them for a long moment before nodding slowly. I see. And what do you think of our world? Emily stepped forward. It's beautiful. We're grateful for your kindness. The queen's gaze lingered on them before she waved a hand. Very well. There is much to learn here, and I have an offer for you. Ethan's breath caught. An offer? An offer they can't refuse. You have proven yourselves capable, Syra said. It is rare to find men with such intelligence and strength. She looked at Ethan directly. I want you to join my inner council. Mark's fingers twitched. This was unexpected. Ethan hesitated. If he refused, it would be suspicious. If he accepted, he could learn more about the matriarch's rule. He forced a nod. It would be an honor. Syra smiled. Good. Your training begins tomorrow. As they left the palace, Emily whispered, This could be our chance. But it also means we'll be watched even more closely. Ethan clenched his fists. The game had just become even more dangerous. A deadly warning. That night, Ethan found a small folded note under his pillow. The word sent chills down his spine. "We know what you are doing. Stop, or you won't leave this city alive." Mark cursed under his breath. "They're onto us." Emily's face was pale. "What do we do?" Ethan took a deep breath. "We can't back down now. We keep going." They had no choice. The future of every man on this planet depended on them. Ethan held the small, folded note tightly in his fist. The threat was clear. Someone knew about their plans. But they had come too far to turn back now. Mark paced the room, his jaw clenched. "This means we're being watched. We need to be careful." Emily checked the door again before whispering, "We need to move faster. If they're onto us, we don't have much time." Ethan nodded. "We still have one advantage. Queen Scifi trusts me. If I can get access to the palace's security systems, we might be able to disable them long enough to escape." Mark exhaled sharply. "Escape won't be enough. If we leave, the men trapped here will still be under their rule. We need to free them too." Emily's eyes darkened. "Then we take down the matriarch's control systems. It's the only way." Into the lion's den. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the palace for his first day in the Queen's inner council. The palace corridors stretched endlessly, filled with alien warriors in golden armor, their weapons humming with energy. Queen Scifi sat on her throne, watching him carefully. "You are an interesting man, Ethan. You think differently than the others." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "I only wish to learn more about this world." Scifi studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. I will show you the heart of Scifi City, the control center." Ethan forced himself to remain calm. This was exactly what he needed. The control room. Scifi led him to a heavily guarded chamber. Inside, glowing blue screens displayed everything happening in the city, the movement of the citizens, the security patrols, even the locations of the captured men. "This system keeps order," Scifi explained. "Without it, our society would collapse." Ethan pretended to be impressed. "It's incredible. But what if something were to go wrong? Could it be repaired?" Scifi chuckled. "It is impossible to break. Only I and my generals have access to the main controls." Ethan nodded, but he had already seen what he needed. The main control panel. He just needed a way to get to it alone. The plan in motion. That night, Ethan returned to their hiding place and told Emily and Mark everything. Emily grinned. "If we can disable that system, we can free every captured man in the city." Mark added, "But we'll need a distraction." Ethan thought for a moment. "We'll create chaos. We'll set off the emergency alarms across the city. That will force the guards to leave the palace, giving us time to take down the control system." Emily smirked. "Then let's do it." The uprising begins. The next evening, as the city prepared for the Queen's royal gathering, Emily and Mark slipped into the lower levels of the city. They hacked into the emergency broadcast system and activated every alarm. Red lights flashed. Sirens blared. The city fell into chaos. The palace guards rushed out to secure the streets, leaving the control room vulnerable. Ethan moved quickly. He entered the control chamber, his hand steady as he accessed the main system. With a deep breath, he entered the override codes he had memorized. The screens flickered. The locks on the prison doors disengaged. Across the city, thousands of imprisoned men stepped out of their cells, confused but free. The final confrontation. Just as Ethan finished, Queen Scifi stormed into the room. "You betrayed me," she said, her voice filled with quiet fury. Ethan faced her, his heart pounding. "You never gave men a choice. That changes today." Scifi's expression darkened. "You think you can undo centuries of rule." Ethan didn't back down. "Freedom isn't something you can control forever." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, to Ethan's surprise, Thyra sighed and stepped back. Perhaps you are right. Change was inevitable. She turned away. Go, take your people and leave this world. But remember, this is still my kingdom. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. They had won. A new beginning. As the humans boarded their repaired escape shuttle, Emily smiled. I still can't believe we did it. Mark chuckled. I can't believe Thyra actually let us go. Ethan stared back at the alien city. The fight wasn't truly over. But for now, they were free. As the ship soared into the sky, one thought remained in Ethan's mind. Humanity would always fight for freedom, no matter where they were in the universe. The end.